Today, we're going to talk about one of the paradoxes of marriage. We expect more from our relationships today than any time in recorded human history. As Esther Perel puts it, today we turn to one person to provide what a village once did. Think about it this way: you want your partner to be your best friend, your lover, your co parent, your protector, your provider, your therapist, your travel buddy, your cheerleader, your maid, your chef, that person who pushes you to grow and become better, and the person who loves you and accepts you for exactly who you are. You expect them to share your opinions and your values and your dreams. You want them to be in a good mood all the time, to handle conflict with grace and poise, to never break a promise or betray your trust, to surprise you with gifts and give you meaningful compliments, to spend time with you, to encourage you to pursue your hobbies and interests, and to give you back rubs when you're having a bad day. Never in the history of humanity have we expected so much from one person. And now here's the paradox of it all. Despite having all these demands on our partner, we are busier and more distracted than at any time in history as well, which means we have less time, less energy, and less attention to offer to our partners. So we're demanding more from our relationships, but we are investing less. Do you see the problem here? In his book, The All or Nothing Marriage, marriage researcher Dr. Eli Finkel shares why he believes the expectations for marriage have increased over time, at least one of the reasons. And that's because the demands that we have for our marriage parallels very nicely with Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Dr. Finkel refers to Maslow's hierarchy of needs as Maslow's mountain. The higher up this mountain you go, the thinner the air gets, which means we need more resources and oxygen to survive at that altitude. So as the needs and expectations of marriage increase, it requires more nurturance of each other's emotional and psychological needs in order for the relationship to survive. I'll show you what I mean. At the base of Maslow's mountain are our very basic physiological and safety needs. At many points throughout history, these safety needs are what marriage was all about. It was about creating a partnership where you could collaborate together and make sure that you had enough food and water and a safe place to sleep every night where you wouldn't get attacked by bandits or eaten by wild animals. The goal was essentially to stay alive and stay safe. Now, whether the threats to your well-being were from predators or natural disasters or invaders, or simply that the technology didn't exist yet to make food and shelter abundantly available throughout the entire year, marrying for love just isn't going to be your number one priority if you are concerned about dying when winter comes in 2 months. Now, once you have those basic needs met, you can afford to concern yourself with wanting or desiring or pursuing some of these higher needs. Now, as you move up to the middle of the mountain, you learn what some of those higher needs are. You've got needs like love and belonging and sex. Now, if you go back just a couple of decades into the 60s and the 70s, you're going to see a huge cultural shift that occurred where people started marrying from a place of love and desire and not so much from a place of practicality. And that's in large part because after the 1950s, there was a big economic post-war boom. Suddenly, families could afford a house in a safe suburban neighborhood and a car, and they could put food on their table, and they could do that all with one person working a standard 9 to 5 job. Because those basic needs of food and safety and shelter were met, all of a sudden people could preoccupy themselves and focus a little bit more on meeting some of these higher needs like love and belonging. During this time, divorce got legalized, which allowed people, especially women, to leave a relationship if they were being abused or taken advantage of or just plain miserable. Birth control was invented, which allowed sex to be a little bit more recreational and pleasure-based instead of more of a practical thing to do. As a culture, we were hanging out in the middle of Maslow's mountain for several decades. And it wasn't until very recently that, at least in the developed world, we stopped marrying for love. Now, don't get me wrong, being loved is still really important. But what most people are looking for in a partner these days is somebody who can help them along their journey of self-discovery and personal growth. Somebody who encourages them to live an authentic life full of self-expression. Someone who wants to evolve alongside them and unlock their full potential together. They want to live that eat, pray, love life together. And those needs reflect the very top of the needs at Maslow's mountain, the needs for self-realization and for purpose and meaning. I will tell you, to keep a marriage or relationship thriving at the top of Maslow's mountain requires a crap ton of effort. And if you aren't capable of investing the time, the energy, the money, the effort required to keep your relationship alive at the top of that mountain, whether it's because you're sick or you're lazy or you're just not interested or you're mired in conflict, you put the relationship in jeopardy. There's a reason that Dr. Finkel's research shows that most marriages decline in happiness and satisfaction over time. But the cool thing about his research is that there's a small handful of couples, the outliers, whose marriages get better and better over time. And as a matter of fact, those couples are more fulfilled and happy than any couples in history. Those are the couples who have learned how much time and energy and attention and resources go into a relationship that thrives at the highest level. And the sad thing is that most couples aren't willing to go to those lengths, or they're completely unprepared to. Nobody has ever given them the checklist. Nobody's given them the plan that they need to follow in order to get to the top of Maslow's mountain and thrive there. And that's why I record these episodes. I'm trying to give you the blueprint, the recipe to thrive at a high level as a couple. Now, it's also worth noting that you're probably not going to spend all your time at the top of the mountain. For example, for the first couple of years of our marriage, I feel like my wife and I worked our way to the very tippy top of Maslow's mountain, and we were loving life together and we were thriving, and then we had a baby. And it felt like we plummeted all the way down to the bottom. And for the first couple of weeks and months, especially of having that baby in our home, our primary focus was just, let's stay alive. Let's get enough sleep and get food into our stomachs and make sure that we can keep this baby alive and keep each other alive. We weren't concerned with self-actualization and personal fulfillment. We were concerned about getting more than 3 hours of sleep a night. Now, gradually we made it out of that phase when we were at the bottom in survival mode, and we've been working our way back up to the top. But parenting makes it hard to spend much time at the top of the mountain. We can't spend every waking moment pursuing our passions or unlocking our highest potential when we're changing poopy diapers and making sure that a baby's getting fed. Some days we're just happy to shower and put on pants. So now to answer that question that every single one of our parents and grandparents have asked us, are our expectations for marriage too high? Are we demanding too much from the institution of marriage? Because back in my day, I just found a nice young lady and we just committed to make it work. Or are we simply at a place culturally and societally where we can afford to preoccupy ourselves with pursuing some of our highest needs and desires because of the abundance of physical and technological and psychological resources that are available to us today? Maybe it's a combination of both. Maybe we can afford to have higher expectations than our grandparents could 70 years ago because they worked so hard to ensure that we don't have to go outside in the backyard to poop in a pit, or because they worked hard to get a supply chain in place so that we could just go to the grocery store at any time in the year and find any food that we want instead of having to wait for the harvest, or that we now have therapists that exist who will talk to us about our problems and our emotions and help us grow and progress as human beings instead of just having to bottle it up and shove it down because what's most important is making sure the chores around the farm get taken care of. Maybe high expectations are reasonable given the world that we live in right now. But also, maybe we could be a little bit more kind and patient and forgiving if our partner can't meet every single one of our needs. Maybe it would be good to spread those needs out to friends and family members and coworkers and neighbors and church groups so that you can focus on loving your partner despite them not being able to be everything for you. And on the other side of the coin, maybe it's time for you to consider how you might be hiding from some of your own limitations. Think about the ways you might be neglecting your marriage or your partner because the demands that you feel that they're placing on you make you uncomfortable, or they feel foreign. They're things that you've never done before, so you avoid them. Think about ways that you might get better at expressing your emotions, even though it's probably more comfortable for you to bottle them up or just bury them and pretend they don't exist. Think about some ways that you could get better at asking for what you want instead of just waiting until you don't get it and then complaining. Or how can you confront the shame or the discomfort that you feel around sexual pleasure or your own body insecurity so you can show up more confidently and comfortably in the bedroom with your partner? Could you do a better job at seeing things from your partner's perspective and making them feel understood, even if you think they're wrong? Can you admit your mistakes, even though it might make you look weak or incompetent? Look, I realize all of this can feel really challenging and overwhelming. Having to live up to these expectations can feel exhausting, like there's just no room for bad days. But just like one of my favorite psychologists, Carl Jung, says, Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Now you know about Maslow's mountain and the demands that it places on your relationship. We have made the unconscious conscious. Now you know that if you want a fulfilling relationship that gets better over time, it's going to require some things of you that you may not have realized when you first got married. And because we have made this conscious, now you can use this knowledge to your advantage. Here's a couple of questions that you might want to ask yourself to help you out on your journey. What choices am I making about how I spend my time, energy, money, and attention that make it hard for me to honor the demands placed on me by my marriage? Am I being unfair when I expect my partner to, as Esther Perel said, provide for me what an entire village once did? How can I take some of the responsibility off of their shoulders? How can I get my needs for personal growth and self-actualization met while allowing my partner to do the same at their own pace and in their own way? How can I be more patient, loving, and understanding when my partner isn't at the same place on the mountain that I am? And how can I show myself compassion so I can continue moving forward when I'm feeling exhausted, burned out, or left behind? Where are we as a couple on Maslow's mountain right now? What's my part in making sure that our needs are met as a couple within the relationship based on the current demands the mountain is asking of us? Marriage isn't just about companionship anymore. It's not about simply sharing a bed, eating dinner together, or going on date nights. Simply loving each other isn't even enough for a lot of people these days. I know a lot of couples who love each other and they still get divorced or abandon the relationship. For many of us, marriage represents the path to becoming our very best selves. We're finding and even demanding from our relationships what we once found in religion. And the couples who are doing it right are more happy and fulfilled than they have ever been in history. I hope today's episode made you think about something new. And I hope it was valuable enough that I might have earned your subscription. I definitely want to recommend checking out Dr. Finkel's book, The All or Nothing Marriage, especially if you want to know more about the evolutionary history of relationships and the science behind relationships. I will see you next week with another episode.